Alright, so I'm just gonna make a video about this compressor pedal, but this will just be a discussion about it, and then I'll make a separate video demonstrating it later when I'm less tired and excuse me, when I'm less tired and just a little later so I can make a little noise. Alright, so put this down lower. The compressor pedal there. Alright, so this is it. Came in a nice box with a direction manual. Some of the language is a little strange. The wording is a little strange, but if you can decipher it, it's mostly accurate. Comes with very, very nice foam, very nice sturdy foam around it to protect it. Nice form-fitting foam. It's actually a very nice box to store the pedal in your gig bag. Comes with two nice stickers. One says "Make your own music." I like that. The other one is some kind of a tree of life thing that says Donner. But I don't worship stickers, but this is a nice box. That's a very nice way to store your pedal. The pedal seems very well built. I'll start with the first. Leave these directions out because I'm going to get to that. The first thing I noticed. Hold on a second. The atmosphere is very bad lately. 1 minute it smells like methane, another minute it smells like ammonia. Then it gives the effect of iodine, very drying effect. But I shook this up. It's soda, but I put it in this jar with a lid because I don't want to spill it over here. Alright, so first thing right away, as with everything, hold on, I gotta get out a pen here. Marker, excuse me. Permanent marker. I tried to put a clear coat, but it caused the ink to run. This is same way I did like with the amplifier. I put whiteout on there, and I'll write the lettering on there. This one's going to be an R, although it's not labeled as that. It's labeled as sustain, and whilst it's not a mix, because I don't believe there's a dry signal running through it, it's well, then I got to put the dot on there first. Dot right there. And then it's called, I'm going to call it R for ratio, like they do in the directions. I'll have to take the white out and make a little dot in there because I closed up the dot. Hold on a second. I had the clear coat here, but I tried to put the clear coat on it and it made the ink run, so that didn't work out good. But I like to be able to see the controls very... Oops, that isn't going to work. I'll have to let that dry and fix it. Not a big deal. See, I messed it. I'll have to fix that. Alright, so anyway, here's what it has. And I put a little white dot on the switch here. It's called, I forget what the controls are called, natural and bright, but I just put D and L for dark and light. I like it on the bright setting. It's fine. It sounds beautiful, very articulate. It can get very squashy or it can be very subtle. I'll tell you the controls. This is I gotta fix that. It's supposed to be an R. I messed it up. This is the sustain, which is the amount of the effect, how hard it crushes and sustains. Not a mix, I don't believe, or they would have called it that, because I don't believe it passes a dry signal, although it is a ratio of how much effect, but you're constantly, even all the way down, it's possibly a part of the circuit. I haven't had a lot of time with it yet. This is the volume. This is, I actually did not have it at 12 o'clock for unity. It tells in the directions, but this is the input. I actually had the input turned up a little bit, and then the volume backed off a little ways. And then the attack, I had, a little bit of attack on there. That's how quick it immediately compresses, but maybe roll it back like that a little bit more so it's a little more subtle. And then the ratio, well, maybe I had it about like that. I gotta fix that R. It's supposed to be an R. So volume input, it says limit. It says limit on it. Look, even even with a magnifying glass. Oops, trying to hold the camera for you so you can see it there. Even with a magnifying glass, I can't read. And I mean, that's my case with a lot of things with the amps or pedals, but you know, you should be able to read the controls, and these are all important controls, so I need to be able to read them. And yes, I'm going to fix that R. All right, so it's a decent switch. It's a good enclosure. My first question I noticed, and it's strange, I'll get to it. In these directions, it talks about this is 50 milliamps or less, which is basically a 9-volt battery. I have a connector I made with a negative center, so I can connect 9-volt battery, but maybe there's a reason they don't have a battery snap in here. Maybe they don't want you to hook up a battery. Maybe it will just draw too quickly, or it will sag too hard or something. This definitely hits like a high voltage compressor. I don't know if the circuit ramps up, but the way that it hits is, actually can be a very strong effect if it's not set subtle. It sounds good. This compressor sounds very good. This is just a talking demonstration. I'll demonstrate it later. But the directions here, excuse me, bad atmosphere here. I'll go to this part which shows these are good directions. The wording is a little strange in some parts. DC in. Let me get the other magnifier. Hold on a second. Excuse me. Yeah, this print is so tiny. I don't know. It's difficult to read. DC in. Input for power supply. Use a 9-volt DC regulated power supply, 50 mA or less. Which that's basically a battery, but there's no battery hookup inside of it. So I don't know what is the reasoning behind that. Maybe, like I say, it just draws voltage from a battery too quickly. You know, depending how hard you're soaking the effect. So the first one is sustain. Adjust the compression ratio. That's why I'm putting an R. And yes, I gotta fix it. I messed it up. Adjust the compression ratio, which I thought was a better name than sustain, and increases sustain. This is the main control of your compression effect. This will limit or squash, they put in quotes, your signal the harder you play. As the signal decays, it'll increase volume to create longer sustain. Note, higher sustain settings also will raise the noise floor. That will make sense. Attack adjusts how fast the compressor recovers from louder signals. So in other words, if I hit it hard, is it going to go bang into the compression, or is it going to go boom and dive right into the compression, which it tells you here. All the way right. Faster attack times right. Benefit players using higher output instruments with active or humbucking pickups. When it turns left, you lose using lower output pickups for a nice compression bloom. So basically that's attack. And then if you want subtlety, you put less of the ratio in there. And then, like I said, what I had done is I actually put the unity gain of the volume down and turned the input up, which is, you know, also interactive, and I'll show that when I do the actual sound demo of it. But level, that's this one here, volume. I put a V for volume. Adjust the final output level of the compressor. The final output level of the compressor, it says again, period. Set to unity to compensate for the gain lost due to compression. So you turn it to set to unity. Strange way of writing it, but gain lost due to compression, or turn up for boosting effect, which is true. You can set it as a subtle booster and you don't even need an overdrive. This sounds very good. I was like, wow, this sounds very good. I was going to try it in my loop line, which hearing it straight into the guitar, it sounded fine. But I still am going to try it in the loop line there, in the back of the amp. At 12 o'clock position, the input and output volume balance, which may or may not be true based on how you turn these knobs and how hard your instrument or any effects in front of it are hitting. So, limit controls in, that's the one I put an I. Controls input, attenuation, and limit. When the input signal is too large and to produce unwanted distortion, which basically means and produces unwanted distortion, you can keep the signal clean by turning down the input signal through limit. And then the tone switch. Adjust the brightness of the tone. What is that noise? Hold on a second. I think one of my neighbors set off an emergency alarm. Hold on a second. I'll be right back. She's all right. I don't ignore those alarms because somebody could be hurt. She's all right. This healthcare aide, dippy. She set off the alarm. She needs to turn it off. She's pretending like she doesn't know how. She's a dip. All right. Tone switch. Adjust the brightness of the tone. The nature state. I love the way they write this, and they put it in capital letters. The nature state is the original circuit, which basically does not change the brightness. And in my opinion, with any amount of crush on here, it's very dark. Yeah, I was playing it through a Stratocaster in the bright setting, and it's very dark with any amount of crush. So the natural state of this particular circuit, which it'll tell you what it's based on here, is a dark circuit. So this bright switch is a good thing. It would be nice if this was an actual tone knob and you could, sweep the spectrum, but honestly, the bright sounds fine. It sounds very good. And the more subtle I set this, the less it attenuates my pickiness. It'll still be spiking in a more subtle setting. So the bright switch is a good feature. That's why I put a little white dot on it so I could see whether it's up or down. Now that's a fragile little switch, but it's also protected by those knobs. So this is a good pedal. It sounds very good. I had a Keeley 4-knob compressor with the bright dark switch, or they call it a humbucker single coil switch. I had that one, which also is a very good compressor. I had an Analog Man bicompressor, which has the juicer and the Ross clone and the Orange Squeezer clone. Orange Squeezer is very good for bass guitar and a direct input. With no preamp. But this compressor, so I've heard very good compressors. I had a Milk Box. What other compressors did I have? I had an 18-volt ramping compressor, which I never got to listen to very much. That was a Craig Anderton hand-built. It was huge, and I had an 18-volt ramp up. I never got to enjoy that. That got stolen. I never got to enjoy that. But this compressor sounds very, very good. That's my opinion so far. And when I make the sound sample, you can decide for yourself. And it will squash. It'll go to extreme ridiculousness or subtlety and beautiful clean tones so that you don't even need a driver pedal. You just step this thing and then you're a little finger picking on the high strings. That's nice and bright. I mean, nice and punchy. All right, so still got that alarm going off for some reason. The brightness of the tone keeps the original input and output tone consistent. This alarm is still going off. It's very upsetting. The nature state is the original circuit, which basically does not change the brightness of the tone and keeps the original input and output tone consistent. And like I said, the more you crush it, it's very dark, even in a bright Stratocaster setting. The bright state adds high frequencies to meet the demand of some funky style users for crisp and bright tones. And yes, in subtle settings, it is crisp and bright, but the more crush you put on it, with a little more attack, it gets a nice round punchy tone. So, all right. And then this was confusing here. It says setup instruction. Connect the power using 9-volt DC regulator power supply, 50 milliamp center pin negative. Well, none of them are 50 milliamps. They're all 100 milliamps or more, depending, if you have a box. They're not 50. None of them are 50. But that doesn't matter. You can have a zillion milliamps. That's just how much it will be like having a bigger filter capacitor or something. It's how much it can be drawn before it's, you've overdrawn. There's no way you're going to overdraw any power supply on that. That's a 9-volt. So 50 milliamps is basically a battery. But that's what's strange, because over here it says 50 milliamps or less. And then over here it says 50 milliamp, which would be a battery, but there is no battery connector inside it. I opened it up and looked. So that's strange, but maybe I'll try it with a battery externally and see why that is. Maybe it'll crush the battery quick. Maybe that's the reason. The effect is definitely, whilst it can be set subtle, is definitely not subtle. It's a very crushy and strong effect, which is cool. All right, so I'm going to give you an example here for a funky setting or a metal setting, which is not hugely different. So basically they're showing you how to set it. Not necessarily subtly, but, not extreme. All right, which is good to give you little examples there. And then talks about always use an adapter for the power supply. Damage could malfunction and pose a safety hazard. Always use an AC adapter, 9-volt, center negative. I don't know, there must be a reason for the battery thing. I'm going to try it and see what happens, but I don't reckon, if it kills the battery that it can hurt it, but because it says 50 milliamps or less, which means you could hook a battery that's almost dead up to it and it won't hurt it, but maybe it has something to do with performance. I don't know. Environment considerations, electrical interference handling, FCC statement about digital devices, whilst it goes on to tell you that it is a fully analog compressor, which technically is also digital because there's a chip in there, right? And it tells you true bypass. It's also true bypass. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't know if you saw my other video. I was showing a sample of cables, differences in cables. And since then, I found quite a few, as you can see here, different cables I had laying around. And yeah, they're different. The one I like the most turns out to be called a Conquest USA 1 -1 USA -1 high definition cable. And it's very balanced. Whilst that other cable I had, that monoprice cable, or mahogany, no, it's called monoprice. It tends to favor and even almost, I wouldn't say it amplifies, but although it tends to draw more on the bass frequencies and the treble frequencies, and is a little scooped in the mids, whilst that other cable that I showed you, the yellow one that I like, is very balanced, which gives a good Stratocaster sound. So other than that, depending what cables you have, this is a true bypass, which is going to minimally affect your signal. So this pedal is very good. This pedal is very good for the money. It was well, it's very expensive. It was $40, $40, 40 something dollars, $45 or $48, I think it was, which is a lot of money for me. That's a lot of money. Oh, here it is here. Based on the classic 1176 compressor. So if anyone knows what that is, that's what this circuit is based on. And in my opinion, this compressor would sound very good on a bass guitar if it can handle that, and it can, because they have an input knob here, so it can handle active bass pickups between the volume unity gain and the input or impedance, whatever they call that. Yeah, so there it is. Comes in a great box with great protective foam, a nice sticker that says "Make Your Own Music." The lettering is almost, even with beautiful eyesight, almost impossible to read. But that's not a problem for me. I fix it. I always fix those things. So, and a little whiteout won't hurt the pedal. So there's my R. R, A, V, and I. Ratio instead of, what's it called again? Oh, sustain. Yeah, I call it ratio. Ratio is better. I will understand what it does more by writing that. Volume, I understand more than level, because you got two L's. You got level and limit. Impedance or input, that's easier for me to understand. And attack, I just left it as attack. I put an A for that. So there you go. There's my talk about this pedal. I'm glad I got it. I don't use a lot of pedals anymore. In fact, I play mostly clean. This is a good one. I did my what was it called? At Last My Soul. Right, which I had used. I think either a Ross or a Ross and a Orange Squeezer back to back. I used in there with the King of Tone pedal, which was a very crushed sound. It was very crushed, but the mix was a little drier. It sounds very good. The drums were very straight. But all right, so that's that pedal. Next video I make of it will be a sound sample. So I hope that either encourages you to investigate this pedal or not. But definitely this one's so far. I mean, I haven't had to road test it or crank it up or run it for an hour, but it sounds very good, and it seems to be built very well. So there you go.